No wonder why you would donate to your opponent. You're a failure. You're a loser. You're going to come out pointing your finger and wagging on it. You've had to ride the coattails of your father so much to the point you don't know how to handle it when you have an actual opponent, and you're going to be yelling at attorneys doing their business because they have the audacity to donate against you and they don't support you. Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider. I'm your favorite podcaster in Kentucky, and if I'm not, well, just pretend with me for a minute so you don't hurt my feelings. Of course, I'm a candidate for Kentucky State Treasurer, your favorite candidate running for office right now. And once again, if I'm not, just pretend with me for a second that I am, because otherwise you will hurt my feelings. But once again, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and man, do we got a show for you. We've got the tale of two abortion amendments. At the same time, Kentucky is considering our abortion amendment, something I've done a podcast on before. California is also considering theirs as well. And as you can imagine, they're two totally different opposite amendments, and we're going to go over California's, go over ours, and talk about what they actually mean and why, not just as far as how this issue should be legislated is clearly different in the amendments, but what does their amendment allow and how they're gaslighting on both amendments. In California, they're gaslighting. Of course, here in Kentucky, they are. As well, the Democrats' claws are coming out. We've got stories of signs all over being torn down by Democrats, especially in these local elections. We've got a pretty interesting interaction with a county clerk. And as well, we've got some ads targeting Kentucky House Republicans. And then as well, we've got some a little bit of campaign news there at the end. And property tax increase, 11.3% coming to Fayette County. Just something to kind of talk about. But first, we're going to dig into the tale of two abortion amendments. But before we do that, I just want to remind you to go ahead and hit that share button, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on YouTube, you hit subscribe, like it, comment. Thank you so much for doing that. I'll give you a moment to do it. Okay, you did it. And then if you're on Facebook, like, comment, share, follow the page if you're not, and share this with others. If you're listening to this in the video format on either Facebook or YouTube, feel free to check it out in the podcast-only form. If you want to listen to it while you're driving in your car or getting ready in the morning, you can do that. We're on all major podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, of course, all those as well. Without further ado, let's dig into these two very different amendments. Okay, so first, let's take a look at the amendment here in Kentucky. Let's look at California's amendment first, because we've done some podcasts on Kentucky. So California's amendment, here it is. Says simply, but says it amends California's Constitution to expressly include an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which includes the fundamental right to choose to have an abortion and the fundamental right to choose or refuse contraceptives. This amendment does not narrow or limit the existing rights to privacy and equal protection under the California Constitution. Now, the Democrats, of course, out in California, outwardly lying about this amendment to get people to vote on it. Because even Democrats do not believe in abortion past viability in large amounts. A lot of people, certainly almost 99% of people, do not believe. We've not gotten into a point yet in our country where people believe that it is okay to have an abortion a minute before a baby's about to be born. In fact, in California's law right now, it states that the law set that after viability, it becomes very, very limited on if you can have an abortion. Past viability in California right now, which remember keeps backing up, you only can have an abortion if your life is in danger or incest or rape. Past viability standpoint. But what does this amendment do? Now they're saying, this will allow us to keep our current laws in place. It won't change anything. It's just enshrining this into law just to make sure, into our Constitution. That is incredibly false, because let me read to you again. It amends it to expressly include an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which includes the fundamental right to have an abortion. Does it say anywhere in the amendment, have an abortion up until viability? No, it does not. And I tell you this much right now, as a person who's been involved in enough legal cases and who's wrote laws and has passed laws, as a citizen advocate and as an individual who's worked and works with a lot of attorneys on these laws, what do they do, what do they don't do, and all the different ideas behind them. As somebody who's done that, I tell you this much right now, there are lawyers, pro-murder lawyers out there just waiting for this to pass, and it will. It's polling at something like 66, 70% because they think, oh, it's just protecting Roe v. Wade, blah, blah, blah. No, it's allowing people to murder children, because that's what will be argued. The minute it passed, it doesn't say you don't have a right to an abortion up until viability. It says you have a fundamental right to it. It's a human right. In California, that's what they want you to believe, which means after viability, if you're an attorney who's trash and want to go argue on this, with that amendment, the state courts, they're going to be stuck in a position where they're going to have to allow individuals to get abortions past viability. For all you pro-murder advocates who are still listening to this for some reason past it, let me ask you this. Do you believe that when a baby can survive outside the womb, essentially it's alive? It can be removed. If it gets removed normally, it's alive. They have to kill it before it gets pulled out. Let me say that again. They have to kill it before it gets removed. Do you believe that that's okay? Do you think this should be allowed? Do you believe you should be able to literally murder a child? If you want to sit there, and we can argue all day about when you think life begins. I believe it begins at conception. It is DNA is different. I've said this before. The DNA is different. It is a different life. You can tell it's a different life. It is a being that is different than yourself. If you want to argue, well, it's not viable. Well, you know what? You could argue that a 1-year-old also isn't viable without the parent's help, because it needs fed and taken care of. And I believe that you enter into a social contract when you get pregnant with a child to take care of that child. I believe that. You may not. Let's say you don't. Do you think they should be allowed to literally murder a child in the womb? If you don't think life begins when a baby inside the woman's womb can survive outside of it, when do you think it begins? Is it going to pass through the birth canal? Do you think it goes past that time that you can end it? I don't understand the logic. If it can survive outside the woman's body, what's your logic now? I don't see a logic. I don't see a logical thing before that, but I certainly don't see it now. But in California, that's what they're pushing for. And they're lying about it. And they're lying, and they'll continue to lie. That's what Democrats do, because let's take a look at Kentucky's amendment, okay? To protect human life, nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to an abortion or require the funding of an abortion. So the Kentucky one strikes down laws. The California one strikes down laws. The Kentucky one doesn't. If the legislature, under this constitutional amendment, if a Democrat wild leftist legislature came in, they could still allow abortion up until the point the baby's born, and I hear there's some push for after. But anyway, up until the point that the baby's born, that could happen if a liberal came in. But under the California, even if one day California comes to its senses after it's become a crap hole, an absolute crap hole, Republicans could never undo it until they pass a constitutional amendment. Babies would be allowed to be murdered unless there's a constitutional amendment passed. But yet they're lying about it. But of course, this isn't the only place where Democrats are lying and their claws are out. We've seen quite a lot of this here in Kentucky. Let's take a look at this ad here that the Democrats have been putting out here, talking about some of the, some of the Republicans here in Kentucky. Let's just take a look at that now.
Kentucky's abortion law is one of the most restrictive in the country, but these extreme Republicans want to take it even farther. They want to make women's health care decisions, outlawing abortion with no exceptions, forcing victims of rape and incest to have their abuser's child, and make doctors choose between saving women's lives and going to jail. They are taking away our freedoms and putting lives in danger. It's up to us to stop them on November 8th.
Now, not only do they lie to get you to allow them to murder children in California, they also lie about what things even do. They want to say abortion, no exceptions. Right now in Kentucky law, there's an exception for the woman's life is in danger. Right now, making them choose, making doctors choose between going to jail or saving a woman's life. What? That isn't true at all. That isn't even a thing, and that's not the amendment. I read the amendment. I'll read it again. To protect human life, nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to an abortion or require the funding of abortion. Does anywhere in there, does it say, if a woman's life is in peril, you can't? No. Does it stop the legislatures from passing a law that says no? But of course, the Kentucky House Democrats can't stop lying. Can't stop lying. And look at who they're targeting. They're targeting individuals that they're 1, 2, 3, I think 4. 4 of these individuals they're targeting. Kyle Whalen, Jim Coleman, Steve Doan. I think Dietz is in office. But I know for a fact, Jim Coleman, Kyle Whalen, Steve Doan, they're not currently in office. How do you take those votes? Extreme Republicans. Dan Pfister, Jason Nemeth. Jason Nemeth was on the impeachment committee, voted to not impeach Andy Beshear. If there was ever an extreme Republican, Jason Nemeth ain't it. Dan Pfister ain't it. None of these people are in it. Jim Coleman ain't it. I know him personally. He ain't extreme at all. No shocker, though, that that's what they have to go to. No shocker that, of course, they got to lie about what's going on in order to forward their agenda. Speaking of lying and playing dirty tricks to play their agenda. So I know in a lot of areas, Louisville, Lexington, and some others, and of course last week I talked about red-handed, dirty, sticky fingers Teresa Barton being caught stealing her opponent's signs. Well, we have that happening in many of our cities. In fact, we have that happening on a regular basis. Lexington, in Louisville, they're taking down these signs. Listen, if it's coming to a point where you think you need to take down signs to win elections, you've already lost. You don't have good ideas, so you got to tear down signs? It's pathetic. But that's not the only way their claws are coming out. There's this race going on in Fayette County, in Lexington, for county clerk. You've got a Republican, Bryson Dengussie Quinn, running against Democrat Blevins. Now, Blevins has been in office for some time. His family has held the county clerk's office for 40 years. So Blevins has been our county clerk for 40 years in Lexington. But this year, he's got an opponent. An opponent that's got a little bit of money saved up, or no, not saved up, donated to her, as well as has a really clear, concise message. Let me show you one of her campaign ads now.
My name is Bryson Ngesi Quinn, and I'm running for Fayette County Clerk. For nearly 40 years, the Blevins family has failed this city.
A ballot mixed up with 2 precincts.
Some voters were met by hours-long waits.
A group of voters has filed a lawsuit.
Fayette County's election plan has not yet been approved.
The line was out the door.
Lexington, it's time for change. I want to make the clerk's office work for you.
Clearly, she has a clear, straightforward message. Clearly, she's making a good point. She's not just attacking Blevins for random things. She's pointing out his failures over time. I mean, he called me up, and I don't know, maybe you guys don't remember this. While I was running for the state Senate in that primary, he called me up threatening to jail me for doing legal campaign activity. I then had to get a ERO, emergency restraining order, the federal court put on him that was issued like that because he was so in the wrong. I'm on election day dealing with all that, and he's over here calling me up threatening to arrest me for something that I had to get a restraining order on him from because he was so wrong. For 40 years, the office has been there. They don't know what they're doing. But he's worried. He's worried about what's going on there. On top of her signs being torn down, there was another interesting interaction that happened. There's a attorney here in Lexington, Republican attorney, and he was in the county clerk's office doing business, normal business. This happened just a few weeks ago. And he was doing standard, normal, run-of-the-mill business that lawyers do in the county clerk's office. Filing papers, whatever. Doesn't matter. But doing his business. And in front of about 15 employees, the current county clerk, Blevins, comes out, shuts his door, and he comes across wagging his finger at this attorney, this gentleman, pointing at him and saying, "You gave money, you donated to my opponent," to Bryson Blevins. "You donated to my opponent!" In front of everybody, to a lawyer doing business in the government office. And if that wasn't bad enough, it doesn't stop there. So the attorney responds and says, "Well, I am a Republican. I donate to a lot of Republicans. And I've donated to your opponent. Yes, I have." And he responds by yelling at him, saying, "You just get out of here. Get on out of go. Get out." The county clerk's office, an elected official, yelling at an attorney doing business with the government to get out of the government's office while he's doing his job, an office that's supposed to be open to everybody, regardless of how you vote, because he had the audacity to donate to his opponent. No wonder why you would donate to your opponent. You're a failure. You're a loser. You're going to come out pointing your finger and wagging on it. You've had to ride the coattails of your father so much to the point you don't know how to handle it when you have an actual opponent, and you're going to be yelling at attorneys doing their business because they have the audacity to donate against you and they don't support you. You're in politics. Get over it. But to yell at them and try to kick them out of the office? This is ridiculous. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, an Independent, a Libertarian, a Green Party. I don't care. You should never be yelled at while you're doing your business in a government building by an elected official and then kicked out because you support their opponent. Guy's got some thin skin. Of course, earlier this year, there was that issue that happened with somebody coming into the office. They're shooting a video recording, I don't know, and he started getting into it with them and kicking them out too. I'm not shocked to see it. In fact, he treated that guy probably a little bit nicer only because he had a camera. It's disappointing and it's disheartening to see these kinds of things. But of course, that's all Democrats have. When you don't have facts, when you don't have better ideas, when you're a loser, all you can rely upon is stealing signs and chastising and kicking out citizens out of government buildings. It's a disgrace. And if you live in Lexington, you should be voting for Bryson. say it again, you should be voting for Bryson. That is absolutely disgusting behavior of an elected official, no less. I mean, imagine if you would, okay? Imagine you were, I don't know, going in to your local court to file civil papers in order to take somebody to court. And the civil judge in your county, you donated against him. You supported his opponent last time. And you went to file your papers and he told you to go. You are denied governmental services because you had the audacity to support his opponent. Imagine if a Republican did that. They'd be riots in the streets. But it's the same thing we see. We see this at the state level too. I mean, let's look at the Team Kentucky thing. So on all your papers, right, you'll see Team Kentucky. And more recently, what you'll see is you will see that on your license plates, okay? On your license plates, they just started offering another Team Kentucky thing for the license plates here in Kentucky. Guys, Team Kentucky, that logo, was Andy Beshear's campaign logo and slogan in his first run 4 years ago. Imagine, if you would, that on every single piece of federal document paper, on every single thing that we did federally while Trump was in office, it had "Make America Great Again." It had Donald Trump's slogan as logo. He's saying, "Make America Great Again," MAGA. Democrats would throw a fit. But yet we have Andy Beshear taking his campaign logo, his campaign slogan, throwing it on every single piece of state paper, everything he could over the last 4 years. And now, the taxpayer, when you go and buy your plates, you just your normal Kentucky plate. Well, now for no extra, you can get Andy Beshear's campaign slogan on your plate, Team Kentucky. You can't even get things like "Coal Keeps the Lights On" plates without paying extra. Now, but for free, you can get Andy Beshear's campaign logo, Team Kentucky, on your license plate. The misuse of office by Democrats is staggering. We see this at the national level with Biden's most recent interactions with Ukraine with OPEC that should be impeachable, where he's going to Saudi Arabia, asking them to hold off on decreasing the amount of oil they pump for 1 month, not because he cares about us, but because they have elections to win, and if gas prices get too high, using his government office to win election. This is Democrats' thing. Yelling at people that donated against you and support against you and due process of their government interactions. That's a Democrat modus operandi. Stealing campaign sounds, tearing them down. That's how Democrats roll. Democrats want to say Republicans are a threat to democracy. When you're yelling at people doing government business, tearing down signs, Sticky Fingers Barton, and what's going on in Louisville and Lexington, when you're asking Saudi Arabia to not cut down on pumping gas just for 1 month, not to save us money, but to get your election, it's disgusting and it's gross. I wouldn't tolerate it from Republicans, and we certainly shouldn't tolerate it from Democrats, and there better be some consequences. Republicans, when you win over the House, and I believe you will, and when you win over the Senate, and I believe you will at the federal level, and when you come into session here at the state level, and when you win in some of these elections, you better start holding people accountable. You're not being elected to do nothing. When the Democrats grab power, they do as much as they can. When we grab power, we have got to make sure that no matter who's in charge, Republican or Democrat, I don't care. No matter who's in charge, they can never do these kinds of things. Speaking of governmental issues, we got the 11.3 property tax increase here, school taxes. So here in Fayette County, our public schools decided they were going to go ahead and increase the tax. Actually, they had two plans. They had one to lower the taxes, and one to raise them. They had none to say the same. They said, well, we need to raise it in order to pay for the growth. Because, the increase of people and property buying and property value doesn't pay for the growth itself. They need to increase taxes because they have got to buy more buildings. More sweetheart deals on those buildings, too, to the owners who have it if they're correctly politically connected. We're putting that to the side. 11.3% property tax increase. Well, this is being fought against. If you live in Kentucky, go to the website. Please go to the website, FayetteTaxVote.com. FayetteTaxVote.com. If you live in Lexington, FayetteTaxVote.com. Go fill that out to push back. What this will do is, so in Kentucky, whenever the schools increase more than 3 or 4%, I think it's 3%. Whenever they increase their property taxes by more than 3% in a year, if a certain number of citizens, it varies, I believe it's 5,000 in this case, 5,000 good signatures, so you probably need closer to 10,000 good signatures, come together, then it gets put forward for a memorandum. Basically, the voters get to vote on it. So they raise so if school boards raise less than 3%, it just happens. We can't do anything about it except for replace school board members. If it's over it, if enough citizens come together to file a petition to force the tax vote to be on the ballot, then they can go ahead and do that, and then that can beat back on the tax thing. So go to FayetteTaxVote.com. If you live in Fayette County, it's going to ask you a lot of questions. It's going to ask for your driver's license, some other things, because they have to verify you actually live in Lexington. But please do that if you live in the area. If you don't live in the area, pay attention to your school boards. The same rules apply for you. Be ready if they try to increase your taxes, because as we see the economic downturn, as we see property values decrease, as we see their investments go down, as we see things get more expensive, they're going to try to make it up by raising taxes because they were not fiscally conservative before like they should have been. And so you need to stay on top of that. So always be watching. Those tax increases generally happen, or the past couple of months they generally happen, but every year about summerish time, you're going to see those. So keep an eye out. One more piece of news on the campaign front. I've been endorsed by the Hart County Republican Chair, Asa Wagner. I'm just going to read to you what he said because, well, I'm going to tell you what, I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you, Asa, so much. What wonderful words he had to say. Here it is. There is almost no greater fighter for conservative values in Kentucky in the Republican Party than Andrew Cooperrider. Mr. Cooperrider has went toe-to-toe with Governor Andy Beshear over his refusal to shut down his business during the 2020 pandemic. To this day, he is still in court fighting to protect his livelihood to run his business from this radical governor. I know without a shadow of a doubt that Mr. Cooperrider doesn't want anything more than to make sure the will of the Kentucky taxpayer and the people is represented both constitutionally and in truth, transparency, and accuracy. This state needs more strong, conservative, fiscally responsible, liberty-minded individuals to stand up and represent we, the people, all across this Commonwealth. There's no better person I would have to represent the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky than Andrew Cooperrider, who is my full, complete, and total endorsement for the office in which he is seeking, which is Kentucky State Treasurer in the 2023 election year. Best of luck, my friend, Asa Wagner, Republican Chairman of Hart County. Well, Asa, thank you so much. What wonderful words. I'm blushing. I'm blushing. Those are such wonderful words. But I promise to always, and those of you who've listened to the podcast for a long time or even a short time, know I am passionate, and I love to share this information with voters, and I love to take action on it. As many of you know, we're working on a bill to classify drag shows as adult entertainment. We've got a lot of support going on in the legislature for that, working that well. Anybody who's followed us for years knows we don't just fight and didn't just fight on things like mandates and things like that. We fight on all kinds of things, anything that violates your liberty, anything we can do in the legislature to help. We push on that, and as state treasurer, I promise you this. I'll provide that kind of transparency and the information we need to continue to constantly fight for our conservative and Republican principles here in Kentucky. Well, guys, that's all I got for you. Once again, my name is Andrew Cooperrider. Thank you for joining us on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Remember to share, subscribe, check it out, send it to people, email it, everything else. I thank you guys so much, and have such a wonderful, great